My name is Mary, and I'm expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby's a boy then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. Our appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, then turned his phone off to hide from his family, then finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated, but they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had severe fights with them after they refused to stop it. And my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived I saw blue balloons, blue cake with father-in-law's name / decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were still hoping the gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusionals and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl not a boy as they expected, and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else. I am a 36-year-old female, and I have always been into jewelry. I used to own a variety of jewelry sets, but due to unfortunate circumstances, most of them had to go so I could afford rent after I lost my job. My husband never got lucky to land a job since 2013. Thankfully now I have a stable job that gets us by from month to month. I also kept one set of jewelry which is the most valuable, whether momentarily and / or sentimentally, since it's part of family heirloom. The set includes a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a necklace. All gold material, and again they are worth decent amount of money. My brother-in-law has been with then-girlfriend for 10 years and they recently got married. It was a huge deal for the family. My husband wanted to get them a decent wedding gift and tried borrowing money from friends and neighbors but got turned down. He kept stressing out about it for weeks, and just the other day, the wedding was days prior and the groom and bride are off to their honeymoon, I discovered that my jewelry set was gone. I freaked after my husband nonchalantly said he gifted it to his brother's wife as a wedding gift. I was fuming. I asked how could he, and he replied that he had no money and nothing of value to give the newlyweds, and besides that set has been sitting in the closet since July 2019 and I never wore any piece of it, so he figured I'd forgotten about it, but he said he'll figure a way to pay me or get me a similar one once he starts working, but I very loudly told him absolutely not and gave him 3 days. Just 3 days to return the set or I'll stop paying for everything in the apartment. He looked puzzled like he couldn't believe I was serious. He said he doesn't want to cause an issue, but I said it's already there, and if he doesn't want issues all he has to do is contact his brother or his wife and retrieve the set or go get it himself. He tried to twist the argument and offer the same solutions as mentioned above, but I refused. I said I just want my set back and he has 3 days only. He kept talking about how tasteless and disrespectful it'd be for him to retrieve a wedding gift, and said this will damage his relationship with his brother and family, and also how impossible it was to retrieve the set in 3 days, when the couple are on their honeymoon in another country. He said I was financially abusing him by threatening to stop paying for anything knowing I'm the breadwinner. Also, he refused to give me their new contact info to retrieve the set myself. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me he had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action. Seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. I've got cerebral palsy that affects both my legs and one arm. That's my official diagnosis, but what you really see is I walk with a limp. I'm a software developer, so job-wise, I don't have any issues. I knew when I was a kid that using my brain is the best way for me to survive on my own without relying on other people. I haven't had the chance to get my driver's license, but according to therapists and doctors that shouldn't be an issue. That's the background about me. My girlfriend and I have been together for a year. We met back in April 2020 of last year, and we decided to get together in May 2020. I told her about my disability before then, but she wanted to try and make it work. We video call on Discord every day, almost always when we're awake, and recently we've been going on dates. She's more than happy to lend me an arm, and she notices things about me that even I miss myself. Outside of my family, she's the most loving and caring person I know, and she's my motivation to do better and improve myself. Honestly, I never thought I could find someone I trusted enough to share my more negative thoughts and problems. I always tried to seem happy so I don't worry others. The emotional support she gives me is really irreplaceable. The problem is scared that, in the future, she will have to take care of me, or most of the work will fall onto her. To make matters worse, her mom has been telling her for the past few weeks to break up with me because she can find better, and she doesn't want her to have the burden of caring for me. She's also really afraid that I will get arthritis early due to my cerebral palsy, and if that happens, a lot is going to be on her. I've tried doing things like stretches and exercises to maintain and improve my muscle tone, but she is still afraid I'll get worse. I'm an introvert, I don't know a lot of people, and honestly, I don't even know the options I've got to look at. I want to prove that I can be independent and that if things do go wrong, it won't just be on her. I'm in Ontario, Canada. Are there things I can look into and do to assist with my disability, or things I can look into so if things do go wrong, I won't be a burden on her? I'm at the end of my wits. I've never really hated my disability, but I've always kept myself going by tempering my expectations and thinking, my disability is going to make it really hard to find someone, and she's the first person to make me feel like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I want to do anything to show her that I won't hold her back in the future, but I'm out of ideas. Is there anything I can do? I don't want to worry anyone I'm with these issues, but I'm at the end of my wits. I don't even know if my relationship is lost, but I don't want this to happen again, and I want to know what I can do myself so I can reassure my partner, so they know I won't hold them back in the future. I don't know if there are things I can look into to better plan my future so it's not a concern for my partner. The worst part is, I've always thought my disability doesn't matter. But with all of this happening, it's really hard to convince myself otherwise.